Thanks for joining us for another episode of Suburban Sex. Addie, can you believe this is our 14th episode? I'm just absolutely, it's unreal. It seems
Wow.
like the time has flown by.
It has. Oh,
So, over the last 13
thanks, Brad.
episodes, we've talked about a lot of things. And, part of this podcast is opening up a little bit and talking about things that we're not used to talking about. I mean, we talk a little bit more freely than some, but we've covered quite a few topics that are pretty personal. So, are there certain ones that you can think of that, man, those a little bit difficult to talk about?
Are you kidding? I mean, I'm pretty sure I told the entire world that I squirt, so that's like real embarrassing. Extremely TMI and probably embarrassing even for my friends. I think I'd almost rather strangers know that about me, who strangers who cannot see my face on a day to day rather than my friends listening to something like that. Yeah. And we're opening up about so many things. We're kind of oversharing
I was
here.
just thinking the other day, I was like, everybody knows what sex toys Reagan likes. I don't know if that's good.
Yeah. I know. What have we
Exactly.
done?
So, when we talk about things that are this personal, we were thinking it might be good just to go back and really analyze why it is that we feel shame around talking about certain things. Um, and just that feeling, I can't even describe it, but there's something that holds us back most of the time in terms of being real and authentic. So we thought that might be a fun topic that, uh, you affects everybody.
Yeah. And Remy, I don't know how much it affects us. I think there's something up with our brains where we think, "Hey, let's not only talk about our sex lives with each other, with our friends, but also let's just publish this out for the rest of the world." And I that's one thing. That's like one extreme. Whereas I've got girlfriends who, and you guys have guy friends, let's be honest. You guys barely talk about how many brothers and sisters y'all have, let alone what's happening in the bedroom. So we have such different extremes, and I think it's so interesting that we feel so comfortable with it. And I love that we've got our friends who have jumped on the podcast. We've had multiple people who have been comfortable enough to express that, but there are also plenty that may never come on. They will never feel comfortable sharing that with us or with the world. And I wonder what that distinction is. I think that's so interesting to me, but either way, I mean, even those of us on this podcast have some level of embarrassment. I mean, we're not giving 100% of ourselves on this show. We know that there's at least 5 to 10%. We're going to just estimate that amount out that will never be spoken about. So there's always going to be some level of embarrassment, shame, confidentiality, whatever word we want to say there, that we kind of hold a lot tighter. But I do think it's interesting that we're a lot more open to it than
You have to
others
go
would
back and
be.
think about what exactly shame is. And, it's kind of a feeling of humiliation or stress or just
Mhm.
distress that's caused by something that you think could be wrong or is silly or is
Yeah.
not proper. So, what are some of the things that cause shame? I mean, I know the first one that comes to mind for me is just, you know, body image in general. And obviously, we've talked a little bit, we've hinted that, man, there's sex in the media everywhere. We got this perfect body image in every magazine that we should all look like Brad Pitt or Ryan Reynolds or
Mhm.
Travis Kelsey or something in between. Where is that realistic for dads of 2 to 6 kids? Probably not.
No, definitely not. I love that you brought up all of, like, the male celebrities because in my mind, I would have immediately gone to all of the female celebrities, the Kardashians, the Taylor Swifts, all of that. And I think we're all just so focused on our own body image, and we are not at all worried about or thinking about others' body image. I think that
Mhm.
is insane,
Question,
but
this
it's
may be
so
off
true.
topic, but when I saw the
Yeah.
Barbie mo hi
Hey,
everyone.
Brad.
Thank you. When I saw the Barbie movie, it looked to me like his abs were Photoshop, like CGI. Do you remember his abs in Barbie?
No, I think
Were
they
those
just, like
real?
yeah, I think they kind of painted him or shadowed him a bit, but, I mean, I think he's
I
pretty
mean, of
real.
course
I
you think
mean,
that.
I
he's a
don't
little
know.
older for that particular role. I mean, obviously he's an iconic actor, and it was
But
a
those
good
weren't real
casting.
abs is where I'm
But it's not
going,
like he's
right?
25 anymore either, you know?
Those were not real abs. I choose to believe those were CGI abs.
Exactly.
Okay.
He's like, "Look, if he's 20, it's okay, but at his age, no."
No, definitely not. Well, just like if you were to watch, like, any movie or porn or anything where the woman has, like,
Right.
size K boobs or something, then I'm gonna pretend that that's not real, but it is real. There's plenty of that that is real, but it's not realistic. I think that's the difference. I mean, what if that is
Correct.
their full-time job to have that kind of body? That
They
is
have
not my full-time
trainers, they
job.
have
So,
dietitians, they have nutritionists, they have a
yeah.
cook.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had all of that, you better believe I'd look
And,
smoking.
if that's your pursuit in life, hey, more power to you, but at the same time, everybody's priorities are different, and if your priorities are a career and being a parent, sometimes the abs aren't necessarily
Yeah.
get the priority. I mean, maybe they should for some of us, but
Yeah.
beyond body image, I mean, just thinking about it, like there's just so many things we strive to be like because we saw it in a magazine. And is that really the right motivation? I guess is my question. So we all feel some sort of comparison. I mean, just because the media gives us an idea of what we're supposed to look like. Uh, in terms of body
Right.
image, man versus female or men versus women, what is the woman's perspective? And we can each go into kind of some of the things that make us feel tense or stressed. But from the woman's perspective, where does a lot of the shame come from?
I don't know if it's necessarily shame. I don't feel shame, entirely for not looking like, Angelina Jolie or whoever, I don't necessarily think that I need to look like a certain celebrity, but the media has always played a part for women in our body shame, our body image. There's a lot of issues and things that are associated to that that we don't have to get into here, but I think that is just innate. That is something that we have lived with for many, many years. It's been part of our childhood and teenhood and adulthood. And now as a mom, I feel like a lot of that plays a part too because my body has changed dramatically after having 3 kids, and it's not the same body it was, and I still kind of mourn that. I am still somewhat and I don't know if it's ashamed, I think it's embarrassed, or I just feel a certain way about the way it looks in a certain light, the way it functions now. And I also in the same exact sentence and with the exact same amount of, intensity, I guess, I also feel a lot of pride in what my body has done. I've built 3 humans. So, for women, I think we have a very strange dichotomy of, "Look what my body can do," to, "But now it's not ever going to be the same." And it's kinda tough for us. And, there's, like, the mommy makeovers that are a big thing, and, you can get back to your body with a nip and a tuck
Mhm.
here and all of that. I don't know. And it's something that I've certainly explored mentally, and I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want without taking extremes, but I would love to get back to that pre-baby, body and all of that. I think it took me a while even mentally to get back to where I was, myself again. So, the body piece of it as well is
I
a
think
big
when I
factor.
think of shame and body image, I think about, in college, I'd always try to lose that 10 pounds before spring break, or, I think about this future. I'm going to get in better shape. I'm going to lose weight before I go to the beach. I'm going to do this. And it just seems like it's this idea of wishing your life away to get to a certain point, wishing that I was this. And once I get
Yeah.
here, life will be okay. And the reason I bring that up is
Mhm.
if we allow these mental blocks to get in the way of our relationship, that's kind of scary. Just the idea that, all right, well, I'm not super confident in myself, so I have friends that they won't even have sex with the lights on because they have such
Oh.
mental blocks. And you know
Mhm.
maybe it's their spouse's issue for not making them feel beautiful, but they also, it's everybody's own responsibility to kind of do what you can, but eventually you have to accept yourself and realize I am beautiful just the
Yeah.
way I am. Obviously, myself, I mean, I could exercise a little more. I could probably eat a little bit more this, but at the end of the day, I have to accept myself, or I'm going to spend the next 20 years wishing for something that I'm not. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to realize, man, I wasted a lot of good years that I could have been happy.
I know. I know. Remy, we've talked about that before, even with the
Absolutely.
boudoir pictures we were talking about. Like, sure, I could get these done now but I feel such shame for getting them done now, and I'm not at my perfect weight or this and that, but then 20 years from now, I'm going to wish I'd done it now because I can't imagine it's going to get better in 20 years. We're just getting older. Yeah, no, I can understand the couple that or the person who wants to still have sex with the lights off. I sympathize with that because our bodies are just so different the more we age, and sometimes it's difficult to wrap our head around that, but there's got to be also a certain point where we just kind of say, dad bod, mom bod, it is what it is, and it's still
That's
getting
right.
me laid,
Yeah,
so
I've noticed a
whatever.
trend, as we talk to different people, it seems like there is a certain group of us as we get older, you just eventually give a few less fucks and then you realize I'm just going to be happy.
Yeah. And I think that's a healthy thing to do is to just put it all aside. If we spent too much time on how the Kardashians look or how Ryan Reynolds looks, or Ryan Gosling, any of the Ryans,
All Ryans are hot.
they
Why
they're
is
also
that?
dads, right? Yeah. Yeah, pro tip, name your baby
Mhm.
Ryan because 'cause they're gonna look
I
be really
actually
good
knew a
looking.
Ryan that was not, but only one. Yeah.
Oh,
But
hey,
even
hey, there
beyond
you go.
body image, I mean, there's so many things that can really just serve as roadblocks for us. I know we were kind of talking just a little bit before the show about some friends, and uh, you can kind of add color to this, but just the idea that there are some women who aren't comfortable using toys. I know I talked to one of my sisters, a very strange conversation to have with a sister, but she kind of, we were talking about uh different things, how things are going, and somehow or another we got to the topic of sex. And she's got a lot of kids, and she still believes at her age that masturbation is wrong. She's never used a sex toy because she thought it was wrong to use that. And that's just baffling to me that, because I just
Wrong,
think so differently.
like like in the eyes of
Like,
God, that kind of wrong.
I didn't. I actually asked Reagan to, hey, can you follow up with my sister? I would really rather you dive into this. I mean, I love my sister. I want her to feel support. So
Yeah.
I think you should tackle this one. I'm not necessarily going to dive too deep into it, but at least from our upbringing, we had a lot of religious influences, and we can talk about that in a few minutes in terms of where some shame comes from. But I just want to level set that it might not be normal for everybody to realize that, okay, I can use support of a toy. I can lube actually helps and it's nothing to feel ashamed about, you know. And if someone feels that way, you know, they may just have some misinformation.
As we know, and we've talked about this, but for our listeners, eh, as open as Remy and Brad and I are about sex, and as much as we talk about it with our friends, overall, we never talk about the word masturbation. Even saying that word feels shameful, as weird as that is.
But you talk about toys, which is so interesting because we
I
know that's why you're
know.
using the toys, we assume.
Sort of. I mean, sometimes the toys that we're using post children, Remy, are because we can't quite get there on our
Women feel
own.
shame about that, or is that part of it?
Sure, sure. I mean, I've had girlfriends who have been like, I felt like
Oh.
something was wrong with me. I felt like something was broken because it worked, and then after children, all of a sudden it didn't. And it's not even a light switch of it worked and it didn't. It's, as you all know, we have a baby and then it takes 6 weeks for us to get clearance to even have sex. Of course, when you have sex, it's awkward, it may be painful. It's not great at the very start right after you have a child, but then you continue on and you kind of build on what you've got, but you're building on something, a body that you didn't have before. So it's a new normal. It's completely different than what we're used to. And if after months and months, maybe years for some people, not being able to orgasm the same way that they used to in having sex, that can be shameful. That can be very embarrassing and weird, and something that's also difficult to talk about with your husband because you're like, this used to work and it's not like you don't work for me
Right.
now. You're still great. I still love you. But I feel like a lot of women don't even realize, like, we're not talking about sex toys because we're trying to be like raunchy or have a shock factor or whatever. We're talking about it because that actually helps us. That's making things work for us in the bedroom where it didn't used to. And it's not like we need it, but we it is a very useful tool when our body overall is not what it used to be. And now it's actually getting us to where we wanted to be, where we used to be. So I think it's something that we've got to kind of, I mean, that's why we talk about it as girlfriends, but like that's from a sex perspective, Remy. It's
Gotcha.
not necessarily from a masturbation perspective. I went down a whole nother rabbit hole there, but even the post-children era of trying to get back to your sexuality and, like, sexual activity and how enjoyable it can be and all of that, like, that's a whole 'nother
Well,
piece
you brought up an
for
interesting
women.
point. I haven't really thought about how to distinguish the two. Maybe we just need another topic entirely just to talk about that and how self pleasure, what role it has within a marriage, because that's an entirely different topic, a very off from what we're talking about, but still, from a shame perspective,
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, our friends, we don't even dive into that. Where you know it's interesting. I
No.
mean, shame itself just kind of
Yeah.
affects us all in different ways.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, the probably a big reason why we never talk about masturbation with our friends is because that is
Right.
shameful in itself. Like, no one wants to talk about that. Maybe we're all doing it, maybe we're not, but let's not ask. I think that's, like,
Right.
in TMI territory for
So
many of
let's
our
talk about
friends.
that.
Yeah.
So shame itself, where does it come
Oh,
from?
sure.
I mean, what are some of the influences? I know
Yeah.
I asked Reagan about this very thing earlier, and I was like, "Hey, take a look at some of the things we're going to talk about." And she told me that her mom flat out told her that masturbation was wrong as a kid. So it's just such an interesting
Ooh,
thing in my world.
wrong.
It was never addressed. I mean, when sex was not talked about, masturbation was not talked about. This was a non-topic. I mean, it just didn't
Oh,
even exist growing up.
it did not exist in our household either. And I feel like the fact that it was never discussed made it honestly seem like it is black or white, right or wrong. So the fact that we never talked about it made it wrong, period.
Post kids, I remember we were struggling. Things weren't working the same. And I just remember I bought toys for Reagan for years that she never even used. I mean, maybe she was just in that cycle trying to get her body back and get, but now obviously she's
Yeah.
embraced them and it's helped her a ton. But if I had known going into it that, she had this bias for whatever reason from a parent saying that masturbation is wrong, maybe I would have approached that differently.
Mhm.
Where at the time I was like, hey, just kind of, why don't you try these and figure out what works? Where she had this bias going in, like, well, I don't have sex outside of you, but and I don't explore,
Yes.
which is crazy because I wasn't able to get her where she needed to be anymore, like I used to. Where if and she didn't know how to get herself there, so how's she going to teach me? Just kind of a funny circle.
I know, but who else is gonna do it? Even putting that on
True,
her is difficult too. I mean, women have gone through enough with
true.
childbirth and all of that, and even, like, after a couple of years, it truly after my last child turned 2 is when I started to feel like I got my body back, and I did not breastfeed with her. Girl did not want any part of my boobies, which Brad was more than happy about because
Mm,
they were his boobies
lucky
forever.
man.
But she wanted no part of it, so like, that was long gone. That was not I breastfed for a year or plus. I barely did, and so 2 years post having my last child was when I finally realized that this is me now, and this is what I need to kind of get used to, and I started to mentally feel better as well. But we as women, we don't know. This is all uncharted territory. So like putting a sex toy in front of us is just such a bizarre concept, I think. Not for everyone. I mean, there are folks that would have used them long before children. But maybe even some of the toys that we used before children didn't quite work the same way. So I mean, it's just like we're learning a whole new body at that point, and that's kind of it's annoying, but also a little shameful too, like a little embarrassing of I can't do the same things I used to, and I can't be the hot little sexy lady that you dated that wanted to get after it like bunnies, you know?
So
It's
I
just
hope
different
that this
now.
conversation is number one, giving the male partner some perspective that you need to give your partner some grace and kind of understand where they're coming from. But also for the women out there that you deserve to feel pleasure too. And that's been a kind of an ongoing theme of this podcast, whether it's oral sex or toys. It's always about, hey, everybody deserves to feel good and to experience pleasure. And that's part of why we're saying this. I know Reagan, and I've got it, she hasn't told me specifics, but she does mention that on a regular basis, she has friends that aren't orgasming on a regular basis. I mean, she's talked about that on the podcast too, but they're also,
She has,
they've never
yeah.
tried a toy. They're either they're afraid of them or their partner is uncomfortable with it because they feel that they're not enough, which is their own issue. But we just encourage everybody to figure out what works for them wherever they're at in life.
Right. And I wonder, Remy, honestly, if folks in that stage of life or in that mental space, if they would even be thinking about a sex podcast to, help open them up. So, I mean, there's also that too. I mean, if they're maybe they don't realize that there's more out there.
And to me, it's helped. I mean, it's helped relationships with the people that I have been willing to open up a little bit more to. When I open up, I feel closer with those people. They feel closer with me, and it's increased the bond. That being said, there's only a certain select few that I'm not someone, you may not believe this, I don't really open up a lot. If you ask me questions, I'm a pretty open book, but otherwise, I'm not someone who's going to volunteer a lot of information. So I know that it may not seem true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
that's
sound like
true.
a man. You sound like the quintessential.
Quintessential
Same
man.
with Brad. I mean, we could ask him a question right now and he would give
Try
us a
me.
yes no answer, I'm sure. Brad, what how does shame play a part in your sex life?
No.
I knew it. Brad, do you feel shame? Do you feel any sort of body shame?
I don't, but I'm also 47 years old, and I definitely felt
Yeah,
body shame as a teenager, maybe in college, and I think every guy has some kind of self-conscious at some level about their penis. That we're all men are penis obsessed. We're at some point in our lives, someone has made fun of it for whatever reason. Um, so we grow up thinking it's not big enough. Um, we wonder whether the girl we're with thinks it's big enough, whether she's had bigger. This goes through every guy's head. So I think I have a normal level of, body shame.
yeah, for men, it must be
That's a
the
Yeah.
big
penis
one. I
size.
mean,
For women, it's everything else. Boobs, butt, belly, legs, nose, ears. I
well,
mean,
in
shit,
porn
it's
culture,
everything.
it's everything is different now. I mean, at no point in history have we had this much access to naked bodies and to know every detail about what they look like.
That's
So
so
you
true.
think about it,
Yes.
100 years ago, I mean, you may saw a couple people naked in your life. I mean, maybe in Roman baths you saw more, but generally speaking, not like now, where okay, I've seen a bunch of porn movies. I know what all the vulvas look like. I know all the penises look like, and they're supposed to be this big, and they're all supposed to be perfectly shaved, and they're all supposed to be this, and they're supposed to be that, and I can get in my head, which none of that is necessarily true. But we've got all this information, this
Yeah.
misinformation, this exaggerated information, which I think is holding us all back, honestly.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Yeah. We see too much now. It's overwhelming. It's all very overwhelming. And that's not even just with body image. That's everything. I mean, myself, as well as I've talked to a couple of girlfriends as well, we all feel some level of anxiety sometimes as moms or as human beings in this day and age. I don't know, but each of us, we've talked about it, like we'll go to the doctor and say we've got anxiety and this is how I feel and blah blah blah. I was literally written up with 3 prescriptions same day, just expressing that I have anxiety over just the world, everything that's going on. And 100% eh, eh, prescriptions are very helpful for those who need it long term, but I just felt like it was a quick fix for doctors even to just, "Oh, yep, you're going to need this one for this and this one for that and this one for this." And it exploded, and that I I I I got them all, and I still have not taken a single one because I just thought how our society just very quickly moves from an overwhelming amount of information, and then just, like, on top of that, let's add an overwhelming amount of prescriptions to, like, handle it? I don't know, but it feels like a lot, and I'm not sure if women have a lot of,
There's a lot
support over
of there's
it.
2 sides to that. I mean, number 1, there's no shame in needing support, needing medicine. I know after
Mhm.
my parents passed, I was someone who never thought I would need a antidepressant, and I was in a place where I really was not being a good dad. I was not being a good spouse. So
Yes.
I went on a couple different ones over the years. And one thing that they don't talk about,
Yeah.
that does affect your sexual performance. It
Mm-mm.
affects sometimes your ability to get hard. It affects some people the ability to orgasm. It causes people to gain weight. And then there may be shame or stigma in taking the medicine or not taking the medicine. So it just gets crazy.
Absolutely. It's so true. I know it is. It does seem crazy, and that's the word that you don't even
Mhm.
wanna use for this because it's not crazy. It's that it's so overwhelming. It's so ridiculous that all of that is thrown at you. But, like, it for certain stages of life, and Remy, 100%, a d antidepressant for your parents passing is what you need to get through a very difficult time.
So since my parents passed, I was telling Reagan the other day, we were talking about it. I feel like I am 180 degrees different than I used to be. And she said, "Well, you're the same person." And I got to
Really?
thinking about it. And, I used to, and I'll talk more about this on our episode coming in a couple of weeks, where we're going to talk about erotic novels and things like that. Because
Mm,
used to in the car, I would listen to finance podcasts. I would listen to books. I would listen to self help. I would listen to economic stuff. I would listen to religious podcasts. It was always something to improve. But, I think over the years,
okay.
just kind of dealing with them and their illness, and not to go into too much depth on that, but overcoming it, I finally got to the point where the stuff I listen to in the car now, it's just like meaningless fiction that I can just kind of get lost in, which is
Erotic.
not anything. Well,
Okay.
some, but not even that. I mean, just, I might do a biography if it's like somebody interesting. I did Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights. That was amazing. But, it's got to be light. It's
Mm,
got to be fun and upbeat just because maybe
yeah.
I'm still scarred a little bit, but I've changed. And she's like,
Yeah.
well, the core, you're the same, but things happen. And, as you change, it's nothing to feel ashamed about. But, I do acknowledge that I'm probably a little bit different than when we first got together, but that's part of getting older. And I think we have to accept
It is part of
that we
getting
are getting
older.
older. And if we're in denial,
Yes.
we're in trouble.
No, it's so true, and Remy, what you went through is, very that is huge. That is not what most people would have gone through, but it for anyone in our 40s and 50s as we're getting older into each decade ahead, we're going to be going through some shit. There are things that we are seeing that we were either oblivious to before or just wasn't a thing before. Like in our 20s, we had our eye on the prize and it was all about
Hmm.
fun and getting drunk and hanging out with friends and dating and all of that. We live a different life now and we've seen more shit. We've seen some shit. So I think there's a big part of that. But also there I think we will always we're going to change. We're going to evolve. We cannot be the same person we were 20 years ago, nor should we be. I think the goal is to change and evolve with your spouse. It does not always happen that way. We know that. So communicating as much as we can to get there and hopefully evolve together is the best we can do, but there are no guarantees with that. But I mean, thinking about who you were 20, 30 years ago, I mean, you've talked about living in a purity culture and how that kind of shaped even the way you thought about sex as well. And here you are with a
I've come
sex
a long
podcast,
way.
Remy. Congratulations.
That's right.
You've come a long way. Yeah, but what did that even look like for you? And clearly that's a very different, shift from who you are today.
Purity culture, the that is my foundation. I mean, it did shape who I am, and I think it definitely added loyalty to my partner. I was definitely a very
Okay.
loyal, committed person, and I think a lot of those values still are in there.
I I think there are some elements to this that honestly mesh with our shame discussion. So I'm curious how that all pieces together. But Brad has a question. He's raised his hand. Yes,
Remy, I'm
sir.
I'm assuming that in your family, premarital sex would have been forbidden and shameful. Yes?
In my family, it was not even discussed. It was not even something that ever even came up. Now, from a church culture, from Christian culture, yes, that is correct. I mean, any premarital sex. We're watching Young Sheldon, and they had an episode where the idea of premarital sex came up, and the they were doing I don't know if you guys have you guys seen Young Sheldon. It's based on the Big Bang Theory, but
No.
Sheldon is an extraordinary kid, but he's kind of quirky, so it's fun. My kids love it. But there was an episode where his mom is kind of works for the church, and she's supposed to be giving a talk on sex and godly sex, and the youth pastor was like, "Well, you probably waited till marriage, so why don't you share that aspect? Because I didn't wait." And then all of a sudden, she gets this look on her face, like, "Oh, she didn't wait either."
Remy, y'all didn't wait, right?
No, but and that was extremely difficult. I mean, it created stress and it created issues because I had these certain standards that I felt I didn't live up to, and she didn't feel she was, there was all kind of confliction in the first few years of our relationship because it's like she questioned like why I would go there, and it caused a lot of stress, honestly, for the beginning of our relationship. So we had to
Wow.
overcome some things.
That's so interesting. And that stress is what equates to that shame of what embarrassment and the ideal that you thought you were supposed to live up to. That's so bizarre. Yeah. I mean, even it, I mean, y'all know I was married before Brad. Remember that fact. Yeah.
As
Okay, I knew there was something
she
coming from him
paused, she
on that
knew.
one. But I knew, I was just waiting, he just took too damn long. But he the guy I married the first time was the first guy I'd slept with, and I also had premarital sex with him, but there was a part of me and I was not raised religious, but I had a lot of religious friends, and we had a very I've told y'all that I was a prude in high school, and we were all goody two shoes and all of that. I had amazing friends, still do, amazing friends that had very like they were good friends to look up to and had good ideals for how to live your life. We made good choices as friends and we helped each other grow together. Um, and even though I wasn't raised with that, I just there was something in me that thought it was kind of the right thing to do to marry him because he was the first guy I'd slept with. And I don't know if that was me being shamed into like this would all be myself. Definitely this did not come from my friends. This did not come from any religion. This did not come from my parents. This all came from me thinking that, well, I've slept with him now and he loves me and this should work, But I mean, I obviously was not the right fit and we were too young and all of that. But I think it's so interesting that even as a, young 20 something, I felt that shame of, well, I've slept with him, so I
Even if
must
he's not
marry him.
compatible, and
And
yeah.
yes, we were not at all compatible. No.
I mean, obviously, there is a standard which is perfect and ideal that, hey, look, we're going to meet the right person the first time around and they're perfect for us and we're going to get married and we're going to find the
Yeah.
one, quote, quote, unquote. It's this ideal perfect thing. We have this perfect relationship, but none of us are perfect people. And we all make mistakes, and there is a
No.
certain message of grace, which is clearly underlying in most of the religious concepts that are causing this. But I think that message is missed. It's more black and white. This is right. This is wrong. You're wrong. And you're shamed if you're not perfect. So we all have different past. We have different upbringings that have caused all types of different things in our head. But I think it's really important that we all do a self assessment in terms of why we think the way we do. Is it helping me? Is it leading me to more happiness? Is it leading me to be a better spouse, better partner, better parent? And if something is holding you back, maybe question. Maybe that's not right for me. Maybe that's not true. I mean, whether it's something that your parent told you, find out is that necessarily right? Is it wrong?
Remy, when you say that,
I don't
it
know.
sounds so easy. I think, uh, like, I don't know. That seems so easy to say. But I wonder. Like, we've used the word shame many times because this is the theme of this episode. But I think it's showing up for me and for you and for others that we've heard, with anxiety, with being uncomfortable, with being a little embarrassed of either sharing it with your partner, sharing it with your friends, whatever. And not everyone's going to share as much as we do with our friends. So it's more so with your partner. But if there's something that we feel we are not able to fully open up about, and again, I think everyone should give ourselves like 5 to 10% of grace with even with our partner. Like, I don't have to tell Brad every single thing.
Yeah,
He
you do.
probably thinks that I
Yeah.
do. I know. See, I knew it. I knew it. I am a talker and I know this, and Brad does not. I bet I know about 50% of Brad by as much as he talks. And he knows 95% of me. But no, I think this shows up in a way of some level of embarrassment, whatever that's coming from the way our body looks now, like the way my belly looks when I'm in a doggy style position. I mean, that is like as TMI as it gets, but holy shit, the belly just like drags down and I feel like I look great most of the time, but then other times I'm like, "Oh, shit." But it's like little things like that like little bits of embarrassment. I think that's where the shame comes from, where we just that's our trigger of what am I not, comfortable enough telling my partner about? What am I not comfortable enough facing or thinking about? Or, like, does it give me a reaction? Does it give me a negative reaction? And that's kind of where we can find some of
I think
some
of
of
that
where it's stemming
Seinfeld
from maybe.
episode where there's good naked and then there's bad naked. You remember? Where it's just like certain positions. But when I figure out
Yeah.
there's a certain issue that my partner has in terms of her body image, I try to go overboard and kind of give that body part attention and praise that body part just to rebuild that
Yeah.
her confidence, even though she still may not be comfortable, but she's realizing that I accept her the way she is rather than, I don't have the same
Mhm.
bias. and
Mhm.
and honestly, just from the way you guys have talked, I can't imagine Brad is really worried about the way your tummy looks in doggy style.
No, my face is not down there in doggy style, so no.
Jeez, Brad, come on. Although I will say we hit a milestone today. I let him take pictures of me today, black and white
Nice.
pictures. Brad, what do you want to say about that? Oh. See, he'd rather not actually speak words, he'd rather use
No,
a little sound bite.
this what she's saying is true, and it was awesome. I can't wait to do it again, and they were totally, tasteful
It's
and
addictive, right?
beautiful, and, I did them
No, they
all
were
in black
not.
and white, Remy, so they're more tasteful. So, extra tasteful, um, very
Artistic.
lovely boudoir
Mhm.
quality photos now exist in a secret location,
I
of my
love that.
choosing.
The private folder is getting bigger, huh?
I know, I know. But that's all to kind of bring it back to I never really felt comfortable enough with that, and talking about it more has helped me understand he's happy with the body I'm in. I don't need to look at these. These are not for me. They are for him and he is happy with what I have going on after 3 children.
Oh, hold on. Sounds like Addie bought it once in.
Podcasters and human listeners. I understand you are discussing a topic called shame.
Yes, that's correct, Addie bot.
Yes, Addie
What
bot.
would you like to,
Yes, Addie.
what are your thoughts on shame, Addie
Addie
bot?
bought.
She's
Shame
an
is a
imposter.
concept which does not exist for Addibot. However, I did see what Hot Tub Brad and Human Addie did
Of
in bed
course.
today.
Oh my.
Human Addie should be ashamed.
Uh,
That blowjob was barely 2 minutes.
oh dear.
Master Hot Tub Brad deserves better.
Addie bot, come on. Be nice.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
she's shaming Addie, not
Oh my
you.
gosh. She's not supposed to add shame to this
Addie, come on.
episode.
Addie bot,
Jeez.
chill.
That's right, Human Addie. I said it.
What?
What? Come at me, bitch.
Oh dear. Okay, we're shutting
All
her
right,
down.
she needs to sit down.
Addie bot's
Sorry.
getting a little aggressive.
Sorry, Human Addie.
I knew she was gonna come after human Addie at some point.
I know. Why is she coming
Competition.
Jealous.
after
She's
me?
jealous.
Dude. And I bet she has
That's
no
right.
shame because she's a robot. But for the rest of us humans, we
Well,
are
I'm
born with
True.
impressed. I
it.
mean, for listeners who've been listening a while, I mean, you that's a step forward for you. I mean, what caused you to
Yeah.
overcome that fear or embarrassment or whatever it was that never let him take a picture, but now, you kind of let him, you kind of overcame that.
I'm sure part of it is that I'm in my 40s. So there's an element of as your kids get older and as you near or pass the 40 mark, you just don't care as much. At least don't care about the crap as much. The stuff that just doesn't matter. So I'm leaning into that. I really am. And we've been talking about so much on this podcast. I mean, y'all know I've tried things just because we've talked about it, and I'm hoping that that's not just me because I'm hosting a podcast. I'm hoping that uh, that's contagious because just talking about sex more often, talking about the Benoit balls, or talking about taking pictures for your husband, or talking about vacation massages, even just chatting more with my girlfriends, things are becoming more um open, more attainable, more relatable. Like if we had never spoke of this before, if we never had this forum to talk about how some of I mean how Reagan and some of our friends have taken pictures for their husbands. I mean Gina was talking about the same thing too. Like she's taken pictures for Tony. um, so I think and it's not like a peer pressure thing. It's not like, "Oh, well, if my friends are doing it, then I should be doing it." It's really not that. I just it's something that I'd never really thought about before. So, understanding that it's out there and it's something to help my marriage, and so long as it makes me comfortable enough, so long as um if it's a positive thing for us overall, and truly, I mean, we've said it before, but I mean, I'm 40 plus, I'm only getting older, so we better do it now.
I think we all have paradigms. The
So
word
there's
the
that
word
too.
paradigm is just such a powerful concept because
Mhm.
when we were talking about this episode, one of the things that obviously the first thing that comes to mind for guys is, well, what if I'm smaller than everybody else? What if I'm not as thick as somebody else? And you're thinking about penis size. So I know,
Sure.
just looking, I challenge anyone who has that concern to go on any Google search and type in penis size, like average for the world or average in different countries. You'll be surprised at what the average is. And it's under 6, it's under 5.5 worldwide.
Yeah.
So, the porn
Yeah.
7 to 10 or 11 or whatever it is, I mean, once you realize that that's not necessarily a standard that you should be comparing yourself to, I mean, that kind of helped me just to have better information that, okay, averages isn't what I thought it was. So it's just
Right.
looking
Right.
at those paradigms, and I was buying into something that it's not even true. So I think questioning, like,
Mhm.
why do I feel this shame? Is it still serving me? And maybe rethinking some of those things, and especially if I'm not even willing to talk to my spouse about some of the things I'm uncomfortable with, I want my partner to know this is what I'm not comfortable with. This is what I'd like to push into a little bit more, just so she can help me with those things.
So have you had that conversation where you talked about penis
Not that
size?
specifically. Now, we did in Jamaica go on one of those nude beaches one time, and when we did that, that was really where I was concerned because I've never not been naked around a lot of dudes before. I mean, even in like high school,
Yeah.
I wasn't naked in the shower with a lot, like some people would think. Like, I guess on TV shows now and sports,
For
everybody's
sports
just
and
open, and
stuff.
it
Yeah.
wasn't like that in my high school. Everybody had their own little spot, and I didn't see a lot of naked guys, so I had
Mhm.
no way to compare. You see porn, and you see a standard that's not necessarily real. But after that one
Yeah.
experience at the beach, I realized, oh, okay, there's all types, there's all sizes, and we're all just people, and
Mhm.
there's nothing to worry about whatsoever. And that kind of helped me overcome, but it took a little courage to put yourself out there that way. Of course, once you're there, you realize it's not an issue, and it
Yeah.
was all in
Has
my head the whole time.
hasn't every
Right.
guy asked their spouse, "Am I the biggest?"
Oh my gosh. Brad,
Did
you didn't ask me
I've
that.
asked you if you've
You
had
didn't ask me
bigger, and
that.
you were very cagey in your response.
I
cagey?
guess you
Oh
did.
my!
I don't think
What?
she ever came out one way or the other.
No,
I'm
because
not saying
honestly,
you should
like,
answer that right
y
now
eh
with our
oh, I should
tens
for
of
the whole
listeners,
world, let
but
me.
I'm just saying that, like, I bet
Hey
every
man, we're
guy
14. We
I bet
must have at
every
least
guy has
14.
asked that because,
Mhm.
we've all dated some girl or some girl who has a friend who went on this whole, talking about some guy who was so big, blah, blah, blah. And so that always, that's in the back of every guy's
Mm.
head. Uh,
Which I think is so funny because women, I mean, I cannot speak for all women. For me as a woman, I can speak for myself. I I mean, hearing some of it, like a porn sized penis would scare me. I'd be like, "Oh shit, what do I do with that?" That's like I want it to fit into me. I want it to be like
sure,
life size in
sure.
a way that actually works. I want it to be a puzzle piece that fits instead of like something that you're
And
jamming
as a
in,
grown
you
ass
know?
man, yes, that I totally get that, and that's why this is in my past.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, there's always, that's how guy brain works.
Well, but any
Yeah.
rap song, I mean, they talk about
Sure.
8-inch bagels and they talk about big dick energy, and that's kind of the vibe. I don't
What's
know.
an
It's in one
8-inch
of those old
bagel?
rap songs. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I
isn't
don't
that
know.
Saweetie My
Is it
Type song
actually a
from a long
bagel?
time ago? But my point is, I mean, the
I don't
rap
know what that
songs, the
means.
media paints this picture which can give you
Yes.
unrealistic expectations. But the theme of this show is everybody,
Sure.
or the theme of this episode is unrealistic expectations that are holding us back from being open with our partner
Mhm.
and being vulnerable and trying new things. We've talked about this. Or I think we've talked about this before. You know, one of the sexiest things on a woman is confidence. If she's confident in herself
Oh,
and
yeah.
she is owning the room and I'm confident in her that she loves me and she's made it very clear she's committed to me, but she's confident, man, I mean, I don't care what she's wearing. That's way sexier than a girl who's
Mhm.
wearing super sexy outfit, but she lacks that confidence. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, but that mental attitude of confidence is powerful. And to me, that's something that I think all women should realize is that, man, the way you think about yourself just makes this huge difference in how we see you.
Okay, and I'm gonna
Absolutely.
flip that right back on the men because I don't wanna sleep with someone who's not very confident in themselves. I want someone who's gonna, not always take control, but just, like, know what he wants and knows that he wants me. So I think it's confidence in both parties, but then also making sure that you make the other one feel
Yes,
wanted and desired. So I have to be confident enough in myself, but then also it is my partner's role to make me feel desirable and make me feel like
that's a
I
great point.
should feel, basically. And Brad does a great job of that, and I think both of us try to do that for each other, so that confidence continues to grow in ourselves, but then also we have to be doing it for each other as well, and if we're not, then it feels like we're
So maybe
not
that would
trying.
be an interesting homework assignment that's semi related to this topic. It's like, what can you do this week to make your partner feel wanted? I mean, it's not a hard thing,
Yeah,
but you may have to sit and think, okay, what is it that really would make an impact on making them feel that I want them?
I like that, and I think that's something that we should be always be striving for. That's not just a homework
Absolutely.
assignment for this week, but something to keep in mind this week for sure. I mean, the other day, Brad in front of the kids, of course, but, like, wrapped a wrapped a towel and, like, smacked my ass, and so then the little kids thought it would be funny to
Oh,
smack my
no.
ass too, so
Oh, my.
I don't recommend that necessarily, but he finds little ways like that n to make me feel wanted, not just because he's about to get laid. He's trying to do that throughout the day, so I feel like I am desired by him, and it's not just because he wants to get laid that day or, later that night, whatever. So I think that's a key piece with, with anyone, just touching, flirting, all of that good stuff. But I digress.
We're great at
That's what we do
digressing.
here.
That's gonna be the name of this episode, but we
Whoa.
digress.
Digression. We digress from shame to
Fine.
being awesome.
I know. I know. That's fine. Well, shame is a fun one. But here we are. But we love being open with each other, and we hope that you all are loving it as well. And until next week, we are wishing you all the very best of your own suburban sex.